Okay, it's worked this time. So it should be coming live in the next minute or so.
Would you like me to start, Piyush Bhai?
No, we'll be there. I'll call you in when we're ready to start.
Okay. Oh no, I'm wearing a racist t-shirt. Sorry.
Right. Are you able to check? Is that on Facebook now?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is, Piyush. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay, ready to start.
Jai Shri Krishna
Hang on.
and Jai Jala.
Hang on. Call you in. Wait. Okay. Right. Good evening, everyone. Jai Shri Krishna and Jai Jala. Well, here we are, 5 days away from the census. Have you completed your details yet? If not, then it's imperative that you join into this presentation over the next hour. It's imperative that you and your community are represented, okay? And what do we mean by representation? Well, let me illustrate with an example. I was at the Leicester Royal Infirmary Hospital last week, and next to the lift, there's a list of all the chaplains, okay, with all the pictures and their details. And I noticed that all the other faiths had 3 or 4 chaplains, except Hindus. Only 1 chaplain. And I was quite perplexed by that. A city the size of Leicester, with what would be the highest Hindu population, one of the highest Hindu populations in the UK, yet we appeared to be underrepresented there, okay? So what can we do about that? So this presentation will hopefully talk you through how we can use the census to influence that. I'm going to request our Margin Secretary, Rajul Bentajura, to introduce and to commence tonight's presentation and introduce our speaker. Over to you, Rajul Ben.
Jai Shri Krishna and Jai Jalaram to everyone. Firstly, I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Sri Luana Marjan Leicester and Sri Ram Mandir Leicester. Today we have a great guest speaker, our own Sanjay Bhai Jagatia, who is the community advisor for the Indian Community Office for National Statistics. Welcome, Sanjay Bhai. Sanjay Bhai has presented census seminars across multiple platforms, both at national and regional level. He will particularly emphasize on how the census data can help the Hindu Indian community in the UK, and we will have the opportunity to take questions. If you do have any questions, please enter them on the Facebook comments section. Now, without taking further time, I'll pass you over to Sanjay Bhai. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, Rajul. And first of all, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, first of all, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity of talking to you a little bit more about Census 2021, which is happening only a few days away now, in Sunday, the 21st of March. And we've been doing these Zoom calls with various Samajes, temples, and community groups right across the UK over the last 8 months. And I think we've done over 208 Zoom calls like this. So our aim was to try and reach out to the 1.5 million people from our community over the last 8 weeks. And I think we're almost there with the whole team, myself and my whole team, over 14 community advisors right across the UK who have been doing this kind of Zoom calls with the community. So first of all, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. I just want to talk to you today about what the census is and why it's important for our community, our Hindu, Gujarati, Indian communities to participate in this very, very important piece of work that the government does. First of all, the census is a survey that takes place every 10 years. So wherever you come from in the world, for example, in India, Uganda, Africa, Kenya, you will always have a census in the country that you come from. So this is nothing new that we have here in the UK, and it actually happens every 10 years. It's important because it gives us the most detailed information about our society right across the UK. And the key thing here is that everyone must complete the census. Everyone has to take part in the census, and failure to complete the census or take part could lead to a fine of up to £1,000 and a possible criminal record as well for not actually taking part and filling in the census form. So the idea that we've been trying to reach out to all our Gujarati and Hindu communities to, first of all, get you to actually fill the census form. We don't want our community to be the ones that have large amounts of fines of £1,000 that people will have to pay simply by not taking part in the census. A lot of people have been saying that, you know, the information that we put on the census form, is that going to be published, so personal information? And the key thing here is that before publishing any of the statistics that we have, the Office for National Statistics, which is also called ONS, make sure that we don't include any of your personal detail in the final data that we'll put together, which will be in the next 8, 9, 10 months that the entire report and the data and the census survey will come out. And also the information that we collect personally about yourselves from the census form is protected by law. So even ourselves, ONS, are not allowed to actually give that information out to any of the government departments or the benefits office or your landlord or even, you know, HMRC, for example. None of the information is shared with any of the other governments, and it's kept anonymous for 100 years thereafter as well. Why do we have the census? And the real key reason here is that the information that we collect from the census is really important because it gives us, as the government, the local authorities, also the city councils, like for example yourselves in Leicester City Council, and also charities, the public centre, the county councils, and it will help them decide how billions and billions of pounds, which are given from national government to local authorities for public funding, is spent across the actual UK. It also gives us information that we need to shape policy and legislation. So in the House of Commons and in also the House of Lords, where our MPs are, this information will help shape policy and also legislation. It will also allocate resources according to the community's needs. So in our case, our Gujarati community, our Hindu community, what resources should be allocated to us from the local authorities to meet the needs of our community. Also to plan and run services, so services that charities and community organizations may do. And more importantly, that the one that really is important for me is to monitor equality and to make sure that are we getting the jobs that we were meant to be getting? Are we getting the funding that we should be getting? Are we getting the resources from the various statutory authorities that we need? And we need to challenge this if we feel that we are not being equally treated in any of those aspects. The census information helps improves our lives. It really does. If you look at the remainder of the presentation, you'll see clearly how the census information really does try to improve our lives. For example, planning and development. The census is used to understand, local authorities need to understand the ethnic diversity of our cities and towns, ensuring that resources are in place for us to make sure that we can keep our sustainability happening in our temples, in our community centers, in our charities, and that again, that we are treated equally when it comes to funding. Public health and social care. The census information helps to inform us of service demand, to identify pockets of health deprivation, and also to support future planning. So that's where I wanted to tell you a little bit of an example here. But over the last 12 months, the Gujarati and the Hindu community and the Indian community have been disproportionately been affected by COVID-19 and the coronavirus. Many of our community have passed away, sadly, due to the coronavirus, and many who have survived will have long-standing conditions going forward as well. So this is where we need to identify that our community needs those resources. And one of the sad things I want to say to you is that for those of us, who have had a loved one who has been in hospital because of coronavirus and the COVID-19, the fact was that none of us could go and see them. No family members have been able to go anywhere near, the hospitals. And as a result of that, our loved ones may have been on their own there, and sadly, they passed away. Now, what happens normally at the time of end of life care, as per our Hindu Dharma, we would normally recite the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata or the Ramayana or whatever scriptures that we wanted to actually recite at the time of death. The fact that there was nobody there, and the fact that there are hardly any Hindu healthcare chaplains in hospitals across the UK. And there are one or two, but one Hindu chaplain that may be serving 300 patients in one hospital is certainly not going to be enough. So I think this is a key area here, that why we need to also have Hindu healthcare chaplains in hospitals so that our needs are met at the time. It's just not bearable thinking that what kind of scripture, if any, and by who, was it a Muslim healthcare chaplain or was it a Christian one, that may have been reciting something to our loved ones at their time of death. So there you can see there straight away one example of why we need to actually make our voice heard as far as public health is concerned. Education is another thing. This is to decide whether there's more schools needed in the areas that we live in right across the UK, and also if there's a need for more faith schools. So you see in the UK we have Krishna Avanti schools, Swaminarayan schools, Satya Sai Baba schools, as you've got in Leicester, and you've got Krishna Avanti in Leicester as well. But are they enough? Do you think that there is a need for us to have more Hindu faith schools? And we need to show the figures from the census to be able to go back to the local authorities and the city councils to say, yes, we need to have faith schools as well. So education is a real key thing. Housing is another thing. You've seen that, in every city and town across the country over the last 10 years, because of migration into the UK, our streets have got more and more busy. There's a need for more housing in most of the areas across the country as well. And the census will determine if there are needs to make further houses and how many houses we need to make. And also looking at our sort of cost of living and what our average wages are the houses that are being put on the market, are they affordable for people who may be a first-time buyer, for example? So again, this is actually taken into account as well. Census information is also decided if more car parks are needed and if there's any road improvements. Now, I actually live in Coventry, but I come to Leicester very, very often. And I tell you something, wherever you go in most parts of Leicester, you can't even find a car parking space outside your own house, let alone, if you've got 2 or 3 cars in your family, you can't even find a car parking right outside your house. So the census information will determine how many people have how many cars in their house, and is there a need for the road improvements to happen? So wider roads, more car parking spaces, road improvements as well. That's the kind of thing that census information is used for. The census is taking place on the Sunday, 21st of March, so it's only 4 or 5 days away. And for the first time, we're using what we call the digital first census, which means that you simply have to go online and you can fill out your census form, which takes roughly between 10 and 15 minutes. But for those of us who don't have the skills or the knowledge of going onto the internet and doing this, you can also request a paper copy of the census form, and that will be delivered to you within 24 hours so that you can start to fill that form in. We at the Office for National Statistics are focused in engaging with everyone, including underrepresented and also hard to reach groups, by providing them with the guidance that they need. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation, we've done over 208 of these Zoom calls. I am hoping that we've reached the 1.5 million people that we really wish to tell them about the census. As you can see there on the right-hand side, it's very, very simple. If you wanted to actually fill out the census form online, you can do it on your mobile phone, you can do it on your laptop, you can do it on your computer, or you can do it on your iPad as well. And the good thing about doing it online is that you'll be able to start your census form. And if you feel that you want to stop there, you can just save it and go back to it, a few hours later, or even another day as well, up until the 21st of March. And that's the beauty of doing it online, that you can pause and return back to the questionnaire whenever you actually want to. Also, to help you, we have a dedicated language helpline, which is 0800 587 2021. And what this is that if you want to have any help in filling out the census form, you can phone this free phone number, and there'll be Gujarati speaking people on the other side of the phone who'll be able to help you complete the census form while you're still on the phone with them as well. So this is a brilliant thing that the ONS have put together, the language line, where you can get all the help, whether you want to speak in Gujarati, Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, Urdu, whatever language. Over 48 languages. We have members of staff who we've employed specifically for census to be able to take your calls from 8 in the morning right the way till 8 o'clock at night as well, right up until census day. Collecting inaccurate and incomplete data means that the government and the local authorities cannot plan for what our needs are. And you can see some pictures there of certain things that our community does. And I think a lot of times when I've shown this picture, people have said to me, and especially Samaj presidents and secretaries have said, we do singing, we do garbas, navratri, we do yatrata, we do, the various Ram Navami and other activities. We've never received any funding for this. And I think this is one of the reasons why we want to show to you that, yes, these kind of activities are there to be funded because it's all part of the well-being of society and the well-being of communities as well. So hopefully when the census is done, we'll clearly be able to see that where we should be looking to actually have our funding. The census has 4 main sections. The first one is introduction and declaration, just basically saying that you are the person who this should be filling in this form, is filling that form in. You've got the household questions as well, about what type of property you live in. Is your house owned or is it rented? Are you sharing it as a shared accommodation? Also, there's a third part, which is the individual questions, which ask you, each and every member of your family, the country of your birth, the qualifications if you have any, your employment details if you're employed, your general health, so things like they'll ask you if you suffer from any long-term conditions like diabetes, cancer, health, heart problems, that type of thing, what your ethnic group is, your religion, and what job you do, and how do you travel to and from work, and so on and so forth. So that's a third part of the actual census form. And then also the last one is, if on the 21st of March 2021, if you have any visitors who are stopping over with you on that night, then you have to put their information on your census form. At the moment, we're on lockdown and we're in some severe restrictions. So I'd be surprised if anybody does visit each other and stop over on the 21st of March. But if you do, you may have family or relatives who have come from India, for example, or Africa or USA, and they're stopping over with you, then we need to actually count them on this census form. Because what we try to do is on the 21st of March, we take a snapshot, and on that day, it will give us an average of the entire population that is currently in the UK at that time. So that's why we gather all of this information for that one day. This is a response rate of who took part in the actual census in 2011. So 10 years ago was our last census. And as you can see here, that the Christian community, 96% of the Christian community took part in the actual census. From the Muslim community, 95% of the Muslim community took part. And there you see in dark blue, the Hindu community, only 79% of the Hindu population actually took part in the census. And then you've got the Sikh community and the Buddhists, and then another 5 further down. But it's this figure here that I really want you to concentrate on, that we're trying to raise that 79% to become just like the Muslim and the Christian community, 95, 96%. And there's a reason for that, which I'll show you going forward, that we want as many from the Hindu community to take part in the census as possible. Also, this one here shows you how many people by ethnicity took part in the census. So you can see there in red that 1,412,000 people who were of Indian ethnicity actually put down that they were Indian and they took part in the census. But you know, the true estimate is that in the UK, there are over 2.5 million the Indian community. Because don't forget, the Indian community also includes the Sikh community, the Telugu community, the Maharashtrians, the Gujaratis. You know, everybody who comes from India would be, their ethnicity would be Indian. But you can see there that we were showing such a low figure of just 1,400,000 people who said that they were Indians in the last census. So again, want to try and make this go higher, the figure go a lot higher. There are 4 main questions. I mean, the whole census, there's about 30 questions on there, and most of them are tick boxes. But there are 4 main questions which are really important to us as a Hindu, in Gujarati and Indian community. The first one is, the question asks you, how would you describe your national identity? The key thing is they're saying, how do you describe, how would you like to be described as your national identity? So if this was me, and if I was filling in this form, I'm going to show you what I would do, and perhaps the same would be exactly for yourself. First and foremost, I'd tick the box which says on the left-hand side that I'm British, because I am British. I've been in this country from Uganda since 1972, 73. I consider myself to be British because I've got a house here, I live here, I work here. So yes, I'm a proud British person. But at the same time, I would also tick the box at the bottom there which says other. Tick the other box, so British and then other, and that will take you onto the screen on the right-hand side, which says, you selected other, how would you like to describe your national identity? Well, even though I come from Uganda and I was born in Uganda, my mother and father, my dada, you know, everybody from my family, my roots are back in India. So, you know, I class India as my Janmabhoomi, and I think we all should, as Indians, you know, forget about if it was Africa that we were there for a short period of time, but our roots go back and our identity goes back to being India. So on this page, on this question, I would actually tick British, other, and I would type in Indian. Then this makes me that if somebody asked me describe my national identity, I would be a British Indian, and a very proud British Indian as well. The other question that we have is, what is your ethnic group? Now, on the left-hand side there, you've got 5 options, whether you're white, mixed race, Asian or Asian British, Black or British, Caribbean, or other ethnic group. Now, unfortunately, we still fit into this category here, which says Asian, and inside the Asian, it includes Indian, Pakistanis, Bangladesh, Chinese, and everybody else that comes from the Asian background. So we don't have a choice here. So I would tick the Asian box on the left-hand side there. And then on the right-hand side, it says which best describes your Asian origin. So I would again tick here Indian. But one of the things that we need to do here is, if we can all tick the Indian box as being Indians, and we proudly say that we're Indians, at the moment we are treated as being Asian, or we're treated as being, you know, BAME communities, BME communities, which is really not what we want. Because what happens is, when anything negative happens in the UK, and an example would be, you know, the grooming gangs that did horrible things in Rotherham, you know, a few years ago, when the BBC and all the media described, you know, these people, they said they were from Asian origin. Now, that ain't, and as you can see, the identification that it says there, that anybody who's Asian can be Indian, Gujaratis, Pakistanis, Hindus, everybody banded into this Asian bracket. We want to try and reverse that. We want to be shown as being Indians. And the reason being is we are very much of a law-abiding community. We don't do the sort of things that, you know, others do with regards to extremism and militancy and violence and that type of thing. So we want to get away from just that tag in the Asian. So you can see that every question that has a connotation of why it's important for us to tick the right box, so that in future we don't be labeled as Asian. The other question that we have is, what is your religion? Now, you know, in the last census in 2011, 817,000 people said that they were Hindu. And yet, even in 2011, the Hindu community is 1.5 million plus in the UK. So I don't really know why people were scared. If you were a Hindu, why you were scared to actually tick the Hindu box. If you look at the estimates, excuse me, if you look at the estimates, in the UK, there are over 800,000 Gujaratis alone. The Gujarati community is 800,000 strong. So how on earth can there just be 817,000 Hindus? And I tell you what happened here. People were either not ticking the Hindu box, or they were ticking any other religion. And when they click on that, it gives you a section at the bottom, and they were putting in things like, I'm a Gaudiya Vaishnav, I'm a Jalaram Bapa devotee, I'm a Swaminarayan Sampradaya, I am, Shiv Bhakt, and, all the various Sampradayas that we have. People were putting that down as being their religion. Come on, guys, the thing is here, the question clearly says that, there is no other segments there for all the Sampradayas that we have. We all come under the Hindu banner. It doesn't matter what Sampradayas and what we believe in as far as our gods are concerned, but for the purpose of this census, there is a box there that says Hindu. And the thing to look at here, if you look at the Christian box, it says here, tick this if you're Christian, which includes the Church of England, the Catholic, the Roman Catholics, the Protestants, and any other Christian denominations. So they're not asking, just like we say that we've got various sampradayas, so does the Christian community, but they just tick that one box to show that they're Christian. And we need to do the same here by ticking the one box that we are Hindu, not what sampradaya you are, simply that you're a Hindu. The other question that it asks you is that, what is your main language? Now, this one here, this question here in particular is saying to you, what is your mother tongue language? So there's two sections here. It says, are you English? Is your main language English or any other language? I would tick other, and it would take you onto the right-hand side, and it will give you a box there that you can fill in whatever you want. So in my case, I would tick other, and I would type in there Gujarati. And if you want to type, if your main language is Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, Kashmiri, Marathi, whatever it is, you can put that down as being your main language. Why is this important? I'll tell you why. If you notice that over a period of time, when you get letters from the government, the city council, the hospital, your doctors, or from your children's schools and that, in the old days, they used to be translated. So you'd have an English section, and then you'll say, Hindi, Punjabi, Gujarati, and 4 or 5 other languages. But over a period of time, you're not seeing that. My mother can't read English, so when she gets a hospital letter, it's all in English. She doesn't know what that letter says until I read it out to her. So by us putting in our mother tongue language, we can then force, and we can lobby, and we can campaign the hospitals, doctors, and the government that we want to have our literature translated into Gujarati as well. If you notice at the moment that some of them are translated, but you hardly see Gujarati as being a translated language. They'll look for a common denominator, which is Hindi, thinking that we can all read Hindi because we can speak it, but that's not the case. We want to be able to ensure that Gujarati is also something that's really, really important for us. How the census has helped other communities. So there's some pictures there on the right-hand side for you. And the examples I'm going to use here is that in 2001, so 20 years ago, the Muslim Council of Britain used the census data to secure Muslim healthcare chaplains. And I was having a chat with Piyush Bhai just before this call that these people have been working 20 years ago. They've been using the census data. Other communities have been using the census data to be able to make sure they can go to their local authorities. And they were successful in having healthcare chaplains in almost every single hospital across the country, because they were able to prove to them, the government, that there are so many Muslims and they are going into hospital, and as a result, they need our help there. So this is a clear example of how the Muslim community used it. The Jewish community, in the last census, they used the data because they realized that there was an aging community. In the UK, we have an aging community, so people are living longer. So 10 years ago, the Jewish community decided, right, we've got to make sure that we start to encourage the government to be able to make more Jewish care homes, like we have Hindu care homes or Gujarati care homes, and there's not many of them. You're lucky in Leicester that there are a couple of specialized Gujarati care homes, but across the rest of the country, apart from one or two in London, there aren't any specialized Gujarati care homes. So again, we should use what the Jewish community have used in fact, to use this data if we feel that there is a need for care homes. They also used it for crematoria provision, and so did the Muslim Council of Britain. You know, I was looking at some surveys of the government that in Leicester Hindu community have been trying to have a Hindu crematorium now for over 12 years. It's been over 12 years where a lot of work has been done to try and have a Hindu crematorium, and you've never had it. You haven't had it yet. And yet, when other communities go and say, we want acres of land in the cemetery because we want to bury our people, the land is given. You know, because they use the numbers in the census to show the estimate of people in and around that area of Leicester to be able to push for the resources. So we need to be smarter than what we are. That, you know, it's taken 12 years to even have any crematorium in Leicester, which is the largest Hindu population, possibly the largest Indian population outside of India. And yet we don't have a facility for an Indian funeral or a Hindu funeral inside the crematorium. The Jain community used the last census to lobby and campaign to make sure that in hospitals where there are Jain community people, that they can have Jain meals, you know, for their community. At the moment, you already have Jain meals in every single airline you go on. If you want to go to India or Africa or anywhere in the world and you're a vegetarian, you ask for a vegetarian meal and they give you a Jain meal. And that's been possible because they've been using the census data to push the airlines to actually have this. So you can see what lobbying and campaigning can do. The same with Jainism in schools. They want to ensure that schools are teaching Jainism properly in RE books and also in schools as well. And this is another thing about our community. When was the last time that you actually asked your 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old child, what are they learning about Hinduism when they're in the classroom? And you'll be shocked that the majority of the RE books that have been taught in schools show Hinduism as being a caste discriminative faith. They don't talk about the wonderful values we have, the wonderful gods that we believe in, our morals of society, our Sanatan Dharma. They don't hardly talk about that, but they talk about what we talk about in our communities as being caste, and we are caste racist towards different communities. So we've got to change that. We as Hindus have got to be able to use the census data and make sure that the Department for Education and the schools, SACRE, they don't use the sort of information they have about the Hindu community in the way they're doing at the moment. So you can just see there some of the things that other faith communities have used with the census data and what we need to do. What can we do? You know, examples here for community organizations, future needs for community centers, community halls, and also charitable projects. You can see there planning and approval for funding of temples. Now, what happens here? When a Hindu or a Gujarati wants to build a temple, first of all, it takes us over a year and possibly 2 years just to get planning permission to be able to build our temple. Then it takes us another 5 years to get the money to be able to build this hall or this temple. And sorry, again, I'm going to be very blunt about this. And I'm going to speak in Gujarati, and please forgive me if you feel that I'm offending you. But આપે પછી બધાની ઘરે ઘરે હાથ કરીને જાય કે તમે મને 1000 પાન આપો, મને 2000 પાન આપો, મને 5000 પાન આપો, મારે મંદિર બનાવવું છે કે મારે સમાજનો હોલ બનાવવો છે. Guys, come on, no other faith community does this. They do not do this. They don't, you know, if you want to give money to your temple or your hall, that's your own voluntary donation that you give. But we should be able to lobby government and councils and authorities that we want to build our community hall. We want to have the land and we want to have it quick. We don't want to take 5 years to build something. You look at other communities, example again for the Muslim community, they'll think about having a masjid. It will take 3 months for their whole of their planning permission to go through. Within 1 year, you'll see their masjid is being built. It doesn't take them 5 years because they're able to show to the local authority that 1,000 people are going to be using my temple or my masjid or my community hall. So you can see there how you need to lobby as well. Healthcare is another key thing here, that most of our communities suffer from diabetes, cancer, heart problems, and things like that. So we need to be able to make sure that there is resources for the health of our people, those who are having long-term treatment, making sure that we've got the resources that they are being looked after as well. And again, if we want to have more care homes, because again, people are living on their own now, or either they're living in care homes, let's make sure that we get proper Gujarati care homes where these people can have Gujarati food. At the moment, if you go into a hospital and you're a Gujarati or a Hindu and you're a vegetarian, they'll say to you, what do you want for your breakfast, afternoon, lunch, and evening meal? And you'll see this menu. On the menu, it says either a British meal, which will include beef and lamb and chicken and all the rest of it, or a halal meal, which again is the same sort of thing, but in a halal basis. And when you say you're a vegetarian, you've got a choice of a jacket potato with cheese on it, with butter on it, or a cheese and onion sandwich. That kind of thing is being offered to our communities when they go inside hospital. So we want to make sure, just like the Jain community are doing, that we have a Gujarati vegetarian meal for anybody who wants to have that inside the hospitals. And again, we need to use the census data to be able to prove that. The same would go for schools as well. If our children go to school, they've got a choice of a Western meal, or they've got a choice of a halal meal. If it's vegetarian, they get chips and they get jacket potatoes again, and they get all those kind of things. So let's make sure that if others can have their meals inside schools, a nourishing meal, nutritious meal, let's make sure we try and campaign as well to make sure that from the census data, we have X amount of children who go to our schools and we want them to have an Indian meal, or a Gujarati meal, or a vegetarian meal inside the school. So these are just some of the things that we should be able to use census data for. I'm now going to show you some examples of what you'll say, I already do this. So most community organizations have yoga classes. At the moment, a lot of them are doing it online, but when you have your centers open, I know that you probably have yoga sessions within inside your centers as well. Many people have luncheon clubs, where the elderly people come to have luncheon, whether it's once a week, twice a week, or however many days a week it is. And again, we do this because we say that we're doing it for seva and all the rest of it, and it's part of our culture. But other communities, they get funding to be able to provide meals for elderly people and young people. So again, we've got to show them that we have an aging community. We have many elderly people. In some cases, some of them who have a luncheon with us may be living on their own, and it could be the only meal that they actually have a day, a cooked only meal, because many of them won't go back home, especially if they live on their own, to actually cook an entire dish again. So again, we are doing a service here that we should be being recognized for and get funding for as well. Satsangs, we have many religious festivals. I know that the Luana community, they do Jalaram Prasadi, once a month or however time it is. Now we do it again as being a seva objective, but the fact is, satsangs and those kind of luncheons that we do should be attracting funding from local authorities for us to be able to carry out this activity. The reason being, as you can see on that picture, there are many elderly people and there are many young people who are actually taking part in the activities that we do. And this is part of the government's ethos of well-being of elderly people, to get them out the house, to get them out of isolation, loneliness. And this is a way that we are actually doing that by doing these satsangs and religious programs that we have during the year as well. So again, think about this as well, that why we are not getting funding for what we already do. Many of us do youth activities within our communities and our halls and our mandirs as well. Also men's clubs, many of us have men's clubs as well. And at the moment, a lot of us are doing Zoom calls. So like we're doing here today, and I know that your community does various Zoom events, even all the religious festivals have been done on Zoom. Other communities have got money simply for doing Zoom activities so that their activities are carrying on. But we as a Hindu community and as a Gujarati community, once again, we feel this is our seva, so we're going to do it, and we do it regardless. But the fact is, somewhere along the line, this has got to stop, that we should be getting what we deserve as well. Because if we carry on doing everything because we'll do it regardless if we get money or not, we are just going to be ignored. We'll just be sidelined like we have been all these years that we've been in this country. things like Gujarati classes, Sanskrit classes, Bhagavad Gita classes. These are the type of things that we should be able to attract funding as well, because this all comes under the schooling and education banner. You know, a few years ago, Swaminarayan Mandir in Neasden, they had a big difficulty because of the Gujarati classes going to be closed down. And it was because of the lobbying and being able to show from the previous census that there are many Gujaratis, and that's why we want to keep the classes going on, was one of the reasons why the Gujarati classes kept happening there as well and kept it being sustained. So we need to think about this as well. And this is where we need to put Gujarati on our mother tongue language in the census form. Just very quickly about the timelines. Like I said, 21st of March is Census Day. What happens then is that if you don't fill your census form in on the 21st of March, you'll get a first reminder letter saying that you haven't filled out your census form. If you still haven't done it, then you'll get a second reminder letter. And if you still haven't done it, then you get a third reminder letter. And at this stage, you'll also get census field officers who will come and knock on your door and to say to you that you haven't filled out the census form. If after that, the third time, you still haven't took part in the census, that's when the non-compliance begins. And that's when you'll be taken to court and a possible fine of up to £1,000 and a criminal record as well. So you can see there that, you know, we want everybody to take part in the census on the 21st of March. But if you don't take part, you've got about 2 to 3 weeks, and in which case, after that, it will definitely be non-compliance and legal action will actually begin. You should have received this letter in the post. Most people have received it now. Some are still receiving it. The unique thing is there is this in red, the 16-digit code that you need from that letter that you've got. And as soon as you get that 16-digit code, you can go straight on to the census website, which is www.census.gov.uk. And there, where it says start census, you click on that. And as soon as you've clicked on that, you'll be able to start the census. And you can start ticking the boxes and filling out the census form as quickly as you can. So again, you must complete the census by law, or you could be fined up to £1,000. So I'm saying to everybody, if you possibly can do it online, it's much easier and it's much better. You can get your family, your sons, daughters, daughter-in-laws, whoever it may be, to help you fill out this census form. And it's one census form per household. So whoever lives in your household, you have to include all of their details on the census form. So even if you have a baby that's born this week, the baby may be only 2 days old, you still need to put the baby's details onto the census form as well. So in effect, anybody that's living in your house on the 21st of March, 2021 has to go inside your census box. When you go into the website, it's beautiful because you've got a section there that every question that is in English, on the right-hand side of it, you can click and you can have that question translated into Gujarati, into Hindi, into Punjabi, whatever language you want. You can actually have that question will actually be translated for you, so you know exactly what that question actually says. So that's a unique thing that we have on the census hotline. Again, the census helpline 0800 587 2021 for anybody that wants to have any kind of help at all in any of the various languages. You can call that number up. You don't have to go onto the website. It's a free phone number, and somebody will be able to help you from the other side of the phone as well. There's never been a more important time for our community to come together. If we want to uphold our culture, our value, our religion, our identity, and also be represented and also be counted, then, you know, we have to act now. We've got to take part in this census and leave a lasting impact for our entire Gujarati Hindu community, and also leave a legacy for our future generations as well. As I said, I've done many of these Zoom calls, and a lot of people have said to me that, Sanjay bhai, I'm 70, 80, 90 years old. What benefit am I going to get with doing the census? You know, because it says that it's for 10 years. I may not even be alive in 10 years' time. That's the sort of questions that I've got. And my answer to this is, if you don't feel that the census is going to benefit you today, then at least think about those people who are behind you. our sons and daughters and our grandchildren, they're not going to be able to do what we have done in our lives here, building communities, building Samaj halls, building mandirs. We had a different mentality to what our children have today. They are in different type of work environments. They've got a busier life than what we did. And we inherited what we brought into this country from our values from India and Africa. Don't expect our children to be able to do as much work voluntary as what we have done. So if nothing else, please do it for our children. Whatever you do today will be the next 10 years will help our community going forward as well. Again, the 4 main questions: what's your main language? Please do put down Gujarati if Gujarati is your main language. How would you describe your national identity? As I said to you, I would say British, other, and Indian. What is your religion? There's only one religion for us, and that's Hinduism. And so please tick the Hindu box. And also in the ethnic group, it says we come under what's called the Asian bracket. There we've got to actually tick Indian. A lot of people have said to explain a lot of this in Gujarati as well. So I'm just going to play you a very short video, which will summarize what I've said today in Gujarati as well. I hope this works.
Sorry, sound's not coming through clearly, Sanjay bhai.
Yeah, I don't think, but perhaps we could play that from your side. It's the same video that we're going to be playing with later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, that finishes my part of the presentation, Piyush bhai.
Okay, thank you. Sanjay bhai, so I'll go and play the video now.
Sanjay, tell us about your showstopper. My showstopper is
સેન્સસ 2021નું ફોર્મ ભરવા માટે સહાયતા. જ્યારે તમને રાષ્ટ્રીય ઓળખ, વંશીયતા એટલે એથનિસિટી, ધર્મ અને ભાષાના પ્રશ્નોનો જવાબ આપો તો તે જવાબ સ્પષ્ટ અને સુસંગત હોવા જોઈએ. ઉદાહરણ તરીકે, પહેલો પ્રશ્ન: તમે તમારી રાષ્ટ્રીય ઓળખનું વર્ણન કેવી રીતે આપશો? તો અહીંયા બ્રિટિશ વિકલ્પ પસંદ કરી શકો છો અને સાથે સાથે અન્યનો વિકલ્પ પણ પસંદ કરી શકો છો. આ જવાબ તમને બીજા પાન ઉપર લઈ જઈ શકશે જેમાં લખ્યું હશે તમે અન્ય એવો વિકલ્પ પસંદ કર્યો હતો. તમે તમારી અન્ય રાષ્ટ્રીય ઓળખ કેવી રીતે વર્ણવશો? ત્યાં તમે ભારતીય એટલે ઇન્ડિયન લખી શકો છો. બીજો પ્રશ્ન: તમારો વંશીય સમુદાય કયો છે? અહીંયા તમે એશિયન અથવા એશિયન બ્રિટિશ વિકલ્પ પસંદ કરી શકો છો જે તમને આગળના પ્રશ્ન તરફ લઈ જઈ શકશે. કયો વિકલ્પ તમારા એશિયન અથવા એશિયન બ્રિટિશ સમુદાયના મૂળને વિશેષ સુસંગત છે? અહીંયા તમે ઇન્ડિયન વિકલ્પને પસંદ કરી શકો છો. ત્રીજો પ્રશ્ન: તમારો ધર્મ કયો છે? આ સ્વૈચ્છિક પ્રશ્ન છે પણ તેનો જવાબ ઘણો સહાયક છે. અહીંયા તમે હિન્દુ ઉત્તર પસંદ કરી શકો છો. ચોથો પ્રશ્ન, તમારી મુખ્ય ભાષા કઈ છે? અહીં તમે અન્ય બ્રિટિશ સાંકેતિક ભાષા સાથે ઉત્તર પસંદ કરી શકો છો, જે તમને આગળનો પ્રશ્ન તરફ લઈ જશે. તમે અન્ય બ્રિટિશ સાંકેતિક ભાષા સાથે ઉત્તર પસંદ કર્યો છે. તમારી માતૃભાષા કઈ છે? અહીં તમે ગુજરાતી, હિન્દી કે મરાઠી કે જે પણ તમારી માતૃભાષા હોય તે લખી શકો છો, જે તમને આગળના પ્રશ્ન પર લઈ જશે. તમે અંગ્રેજી કેટલું સારું બોલી શકો છો? અહીં તમને લાગતું પડતું હોય એ વિકલ્પ પસંદ કરી શકો છો, જેમ કે ખૂબ સારું, સારું, થોડું ઘણું કે બિલકુલ નહીં. અને છેલ્લે, આપણે આ વાતનું ખાસ ધ્યાન રાખીએ છીએ કે જ્યારે આપણે ફોર્મ ભરીએ ત્યારે ઉપરોક્ત ઉત્તરો ઘરના તમામ સભ્યોને લાગુ પડે છે. આભાર.
Steve's the monkey. It's the little black car.
Okay, next we've got Padmini Ben, our local councillor, Leicester councillor here, to say a few words regarding census. Over to you, Padmini Ben. If you could unmute yourself, thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, પહેલા તો મારે તમને બધાને કહેવું છે કે ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર કે અમને ત્રણેય કાઉન્સિલરને આમંત્રણ આપ્યું છે તમે. ચેતનભાઈનો, તમારો કમિટીનો એન્ડ બધા જે આપણે આમાં જોડાયા છે તો સૌનો હું ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર માનું છું. આજે આપણે જોયું હમણાં કે આ સેન્સસનું કેટલું મહત્વ આપણે માટે જરૂરી છે. મારું એ કહેવું છે કે આ અત્યાર સુધી આપણા ભાઈઓએ વધારે આમાં ભાગ લીધા નથી, પણ હવે સમય આવી ગયો છે કે આપણે જાગીએ, આમાં એકતા બતાડીએ કે આપણી સંસ્થા ઘણી છે, મોટે ભાગે છે. ગયા વખતે જ્યારે 10 વર્ષ પહેલા જ્યારે આવી રીતે સવાલના જવાબ કરવામાં આવ્યા હતા ત્યારે આપણે 80% જેટલા માણસોએ જ ભર્યું હતું. આપણી પાસે સંસ્થા બધાએ નહોતું આ ભર્યું. એમાં બતાડવામાં આવ્યું કે આપણી વસ્તી ઓછી છે ને બીજી કમ્યુનિટીની વસ્તી ઘણી છે, પણ શક્ય એ નથી. તો આપણે હવે અત્યારે તો જો જોવા જઈએ તો એક ઘરમાં લગભગ 13 જણા બી રહેતા હોય છે. તો આપણે એ બધાના નામ લખીએ એવો સંદેશો પહોંચાડવાનો બહુ જરૂરી છે બધાને. આપણે હિન્દુ છે તે જાણવા બહુ જરૂરી છે કે આપણે હિન્દુ છે, હિન્દુ કમ્યુનિટીઝ છે ને જેમ આપણે સંજુભાઈએ વાત કરી આગળ બધું ફોટા સાથે બતાડતા હતા કે આપણે કેમ સંસ્થામાં કેમ આપણે કઈ વસ્તુ મળતી નથી કે કેમ આપણે કાઉન્સિલમાંથી ઘણી વસ્તુ નથી મળી શકતી. એનું કારણ જ આ છે કે આપણે સાબિત નથી કરી શકતા કે આપણી સંસ્થા કેટલી છે, કેટલા છે. તો આજે સમય આવી ગયો છે આપણી પાસે કે આપણે જો એકતા થઈને આ બધું કરીએ તો આપણા બી ઘણા બધા કામ થઈ શકે એમ છે. આપણા ભાઈઓને મદદ કરી શકીએ છીએ. આજે સંજયભાઈ એ પણ કીધું કે કેટલા આપણા ભાઈઓ છે કે બહેનો છે કે જેને આવી રીતે ફોર્મ ભરતા ના આવડે, તો આપણે એને કેવી રીતે મદદ કરીએ એવી સંસ્થાઓની આપણે જરૂર છે. તો આપણે કહીએ ઇંગ્લિશમાં કે પ્રોજેક્ટ કે એવી સંસ્થા ગોઠવવી જોઈએ આપણે કે જ્યાંથી આવા આપણા જે અભણ છે, જેને ઘણીવાર કઈ ખબર નથી પડતી ને અહીંયા તો આઈ થિંક બધાને અનુભવ થયો હશે કે કાગળના ઢગલા હોય, તો એ સમજવું એક મોટી વાત છે કે તમે આપણે બેનિફિટના કાગળ જોઈએ તો એમાં એક જ લોગો હોય, તમે બીજા સિટી કાઉન્સિલના કાગળ આવે તો એમાં એક જ લોગો હોય, પણ કયું કાગળ શું છે એ જાણવા માટે આપણે બધા આવા અભણને સમજાવવા જોઈએ. તો આપણે આ બધું આપણે જાણવા હોય ને આવી સંસ્થા હોય તો આપણે શીખવાડી શકીએ. અત્યારે આ ફોર્મ ભરવાનું છે તો આપણે કેવી રીતે એ લોકોને મદદ કરીને કહી શકીએ કે આપણી સંસ્થા ઘણી બધી છે. તો મારી વિનંતી છે બધાને કે જેને કોઈને ના આવડતું હોય તો ફેમિલીમાં કે ગમે ત્યાં જો કોઈ હેલ્પ કરતું હોય તો અહીંયા હેલ્પ લઈ મદદ લઈ ને આ ફોર્મ જરૂરી છે ભરવું. એમાં 3 ખાસ વસ્તુ જાણવા માટે જરૂર લખજો કે એક આપણે હિન્દુ છે, આપણે ગુજરાતી માતૃભાષા છે ને આપણે બ્રિટિશ એશિયન છે. આપણા માટે એ બહુ જરૂરી છે. તો પ્લીઝ બધાને વિનંતી છે કે આ સંદેશો પહોંચાડો બધે ને રવિવાર સુધીમાં જેટલું બી થાય એના પછી તો જેમ ભાઈએ કીધું કે રિમાઇન્ડર આવશે એવી રીતે રિમાઇન્ડર આવશે, પણ રિમાઇન્ડર આવે ની પહેલા ભરી દ્યો તો વધારે સારું છે. તે આમાંથી આપણે શું ફાયદો લઈ શકીએ એ પછી આવશે. કદાચ ને આપણું આ કહીએ કે આપણે ના કરી શકીએ, પણ આપણા પછીના જે આપણા બાળકો છે તે જો આ લાઈન ઉપર જાય તો ઘણું બધું કામ થઈ શકે છે. આમાં ઉપરથી લઈ શકીને કે આ આપણા ભાઈઓ આટલા છે તો આપણે આપણા ભાઈઓ માટે કેમ આટલું કરીએ. આપણે લેસ્ટરમાં જ એક દાખલો જો હું બતાડું કે લેસ્ટરમાં મસ્જિદો કેટલી છે ને મંદિરો કેટલા છે. આના ઉપરથી આપણે ઘણું બધું કહી શકીએ છીએ. તો આ સેન્સસ ફોર્મ ભરીએ, એનું બધી માહિતી ભરો, નાનેથી મોટા. નવું જન્મેલું બાળક હોય, ભલે 2 દિવસનું હોય, એનું પણ નામ લખજો. ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર.
Thank you, Padmini Ben, for your words of support there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Sanjay Bhai.
Yes, I think if we have any questions at all, Piyush, I'm happy
Yes,
to.
we've got a handful of questions come through. And I think the first one here is covered actually. It's asking, we live in an extended family with grandparents and 3 children. Younger 2 children are 2-month-old twins. Do we need to declare the twins? Which I think we've covered in the presentation, that it needs to cover every individual within the household, doesn't it? And they've also asked, do we need to complete 2 separate forms, one for grandparents and one for our family?
No, the actual census form is per household. And as Padmini Ben said, that even if the child is 2 days old, you need to include, the child may not have a name yet because you haven't registered it, but you still need to clarify that there is a newborn baby. And Piyush Bhai, the reason for that is that the census lasts for 10 years. So in 5 years' time, the child will be going to nursery, 7 years' time will be going to school, 10 years' time it will be in secondary school. So local authorities and people like councillors can make provisions for that baby who may be nothing today on a paper form, but in 10 years' time, during the time of his or her lifetime, we will have the resources to be able to be put in place. Secondly, it may be that they live in an area where there's hardly any spaces to go into the nearest school. So the local authorities can then decide if there's a need for more schools in that area as well. With regards to how many people you can put on a census form, if you have a paper form, unfortunately, you can only put 5 because there's only boxes for 5 people. So you would have to request what's called a continuation form, and that will be sent to you. But if you do it online, you can put as many names as you want on because it gives you that option of putting in quite a few names on there. So that's the difference with the two. But you do need to count everybody. And if I go back to 10 years ago, Piyush Bhai, this is one of the reasons why we didn't get the figures of showing how many Hindus, because I think people didn't know that they have to put everybody's name down in the family. And I think this is one of the reasons why we only showed that there was 800,000 Hindus, which is absolutely ridiculous. In Leicester alone, you must have over 100,000.
Yes, definitely. Okay, second question is quite interesting. It's why has 21st March been chosen for the census date? Would it not have been better to choose a date later in the year once the lockdown is eased? This is mainly if households need assistance in completing the forms, then it would be better if the lockdown restrictions were eased.
So what happens, Piyush Bhai, is that the census forms are first of all debated in the House of Parliament. The MPs approve it, and then it goes to the House of Lords. The House of Lords ratify it, and then it comes back for legislation, because the census is legislation, is a policy. Now, this was done before we knew that coronavirus was ever going to happen to us. It was done, almost 18 months ago. And what happened when you've got 50 million people that you've got to try and capture in the entire UK? And I must say that, you know, the cost implications of cancelling this at this stage, it would have been nearly £1 billion, you know,
Right.
because this is how much it costs for the census to go across the entire country. So it would have been too late for us to cancel this, and hence the reason why it had to go forward. And we've tried to do as much as we can online. And the online is as a result of that, really, that it's given people an opportunity of filling out the census form online. We had no idea that the COVID-19 was going to come. Once it's been legislated in Parliament, it was then up to us to make sure that we go and reach out to this 50 million. And Piyush Bhai, it's probably one of the biggest tasks in the entire UK to do the census. There's nothing like this at all. It's a bit like the vaccine, that every single person has to have the vaccine and every single person has to have the census.
Indeed, yeah, good analogy that. Yes. Okay, the next question. It's one that I'm also interested in on behalf of Sri Luana Mahajan, really. And it's asking, why have there been no consultations with Hindu organizations when designing the form? And, well, it's too late now, but how can this be addressed in the future?
I applaud the person who's actually asked you this, because this is what I've been saying. Sometimes when I'm working in central government, and Padmini Ben and her colleagues know this, that we are sometimes the lone wolves. We are the only Hindus, and nobody supports us, nobody backs us, nobody. And this is why I'm saying that we are so used to having, oh, we've got this national umbrella Hindu organizations, and I'm a kind of member, it doesn't work that way. You've seen yourself that census has proved that it's all to do with local authorities. So you could be, Luana Mahajan has to have the voice in its own right. You don't need any Hindu councils or Gujarati councils or federations to represent you. You have to stand up and be counted. And this is why I'm saying there are far few of us that do not interact with local government and national government to actually raise our voice. And when you don't have the figures of how many Hindus there are, and we say that there are 800, we are nowhere near compared. Look at the Jewish community. It's probably got less than that, but it's definitely got less amount of people than ours, but they rule the country. They have everything that, you know, well, not, you know, they actually know how to actually do, their voice is listened to. That's why I say it's up to us. We've really got to engage ourselves in a little bit more of this political sphere. We sometimes say, okay, now I'm in Mandir Chetla, we won't interfere in politics, but you've seen, without politics, you don't get nothing.
True. I'll just bring in Padmini Ben here on that point as well. I know she's got a hand.
Yes, thank you very much. ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર. સંજયભાઈ જે વાત કઈ રીતે બહુ ક્વેશ્ચન બહુ જે સવાલ આવ્યો છે તે બહુ સારો છે આપણા માટે, કે ને હમણાં જેમ સંજયભાઈએ કીધું કે આમાં છે ને પોલિટિક્સમાં જો કે પોલિટિક્સની જરૂર છે ને નથી, પણ એમાં છે ને આપણે જો કામ કરી શકતા હોય ભેગા થઈને કે આપણે આ વસ્તુની જરૂર છે, આપણે આપણા માટે આપણા ભાઈઓ માટે આ વસ્તુની જરૂર છે, તો એ આપણે કરી શકીએ છીએ. એ જ કહેવા માંગુ છું કે હવે સમય આવી ગયો છે કે આપણા હિન્દુ ભાઈઓને જાગવું જોઈએ ને થોડો એમ નથી કહેતી કે તમે સાવ પોલિટિશિયન બની જાઓ, પણ થોડો તમે ભાગ લેતા હો તો ખબર પડે કે આ જગ્યાએથી આપણે આ મળશે, આ આપણા ફાયદાકારક છે, કે આ વ્યક્તિ આપણા માટે ફાયદાકારક છે. આ લોકો તમે જો આ બીજા કમ્યુનિટીના છે તે શું કરશે કે જે ઓલા મોટા આવશે એના હાથમાં રાખશે. જો મારાથી વધારે કઈ બોલે છે તો માફી, પણ જે હકીકત છે એ બોલીશ. તો આપણે કેમ નથી કરી શકતા? આમાં આપણી યુનિટી જરા પુઅર છે, એ જગાડો.
Quite right. You're very right, Ben. And this is the whole idea. Our presentation is really more about Hindi community unity. That's why.
Thank you.
Okay, next question has come on Facebook from Bharat Bhai Kotesha, and he's mentioned on here, are we able to request a paper copy of the census if we do it online? But again, I've got another question, and actually even myself, I wondered, Sanjay Bhai, Okay, I did mine yesterday. I completed mine yesterday, but I was surprised I couldn't download a PDF version of my answers or anything like that, which normally you should be able to do with forms that you submit.
Right. Okay. So if you go back to the first slide that I did, and I said to you that everything that happens on a census form, we don't carry any personal information. The government doesn't hold that personal information. And if we were able to get people to do it as a PDF, your answers, for example, we have no idea whether you filled that form in or somebody in your family who you may not get on with has filled in that form and used your, so that's the reason why you will not find any copies of this your answers anywhere. So you don't get a copy of the PDF from that, and it's all to do with security. And when I say to you about the Office for National Statistics, every day you see on the news with the vaccines, how many people have died.
Yeah.
All that information is provided by the ONS. So we are not just UK's, but probably the world's largest data agency. And it's very secure, so you won't be able to have a PDF copy. But to answer the question, can you have a paper copy? Yes, you can request one, and they'll give you a paper copy.
Oh, you can request one. Okay. Oh, sorry, to fill in, you mean?
Yeah, to fill in. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, not
your answers. There will be nowhere where your answers are available. Even I can't see them. Nobody can see those answers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But then goes on to further elaborate on the point about fines, and I think the point he's trying to make on here is that at the last census, we obviously said that Hindus were underrepresented quite a large proportion there, and that's probably because we've not filled the forms in, or we've not filled the forms in correctly. And if we've not filled the forms in, does that mean that what he's asking is, does that mean a lot of the Hindu community didn't get fined for not filling in the forms?
Yeah.
Or,
well, I have no idea how many Hindus got fined, because again, this is another thing about being confidential, that you would not know that so and so person has been fined for not filling out a census form, which is very confidential. But on top of that, it's not just that people did not fill the form in. Those who filled the form in didn't actually fill the right questions.
Identify. Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I've got two boys, one's 27, one's 35. And when I was doing this whole census work, I said to them, Beta, what do you class as being your identity? And both of them says, Dad, I'm British. So if my own children would not understand that, that you have to take British Indian, you can expect what people did in 2011. And these are kids who have been born in this country. They've been educated here, so they automatically think that they're British. But that question is not asking you what's the color of your passport or what does it say on your passport. It's not asking you that. It's saying to you that what do you see as your identity? And I'll give you another thing about this. If we all start to say that we are British Indian, it would help the government with regards to their foreign policy. At the moment, all across the country, there is an anti-India sentiment, anti-Hindu sentiment. And, if we can show large numbers, none of these MPs who are talking bad about, India and taking us to the cleaners will have the guts to do this, because they have got a large amount of British Indians saying, no, we want to actually make sure you don't do this. You don't say this about our country. You don't say this about our religion. And, we can then use that sort of to our benefit with the government. As you've seen, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's going to India. India has been selected as the first country in the entire world that UK is going to work with post-Brexit. And shouldn't we be proud then to be Indians? And if we're proud to be Indians, take what it says Indians, instead of sticking that we're British.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The only thing I found unbelievable in your answer is that you said you have a 35-year-old son. You don't look old enough. Okay. So next question, is this the first time that the census has been made available online? And then a follow-up question on that is, if it increases the response rate, is there scope to increase the frequency to say something like every 5 years instead of 10 years? Given that we are now in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah, the first part of the question is definitely the first time we've done it as a online.
Online.
And I tell you what, it's the best. I did my census form. It took me 10 minutes, and it was
Yes.
the easiest thing to do. So I think this is the first time, and I think we had to move with the times, because a lot of people, every person's got a mobile phone nowadays that you can do this on. With regards to the frequency, there is talk about this, you know, in a central government, and it's really going to be people like Padmini Ben and her team that will probably decide that whether a census needs to be localized in future. Does it need to be perhaps every 3-4 years? It is something that the local authorities are already raising, that this is perhaps the way to, because you have elections every 4 years, things change as well, and you know, budgets change and that kind of thing. So it may well happen. At the moment, we don't know, but these are sort of discussions that I know that have been made.
That's an interesting concept, really. You talk about localized censuses rather than a national census like this, you know.
Because
which,
at the moment, the central government gives the money to Leicester City Council, for example, and it gives it. So our Rishi Bhai, the Chancellor, would have looked at what he's going to give to Leicester City Council, and so they'll have that money to spend, you know, in the next year. So it may be better to have it localized in future.
Knowing Rishi Bhai being a Gujarati person, I hope he looks upon Leicester more favorably. Sanjay Bhai, final question, and this is from me, okay? And I'm saying, I imagine the analytics of the data of this proportion takes something like 12 to 18 months to become available, okay? How can organizations like ourselves, Margin, get access to the statistics that are generated by the data, and how granular will that data be? So for example, okay, Hindus in the UK, X number. Can we then drill down into geographical regions and how they're dispersed, or by age composition? And is there a cost to acquire this data, or is it publicly available?
Absolutely brilliant question. It's the first time in 50 years of our existence in this country that somebody has asked that question the way it should have been. Because the fact is, the census is not just for local authorities, it's not just for government, it's not just for public sector, it's for us as well. When the results are published, which will be between 9 to 12 months from today, or from Sunday, it will take, and it will be analyzed in regionalized areas. So you can, you know, it's like a vast amount of data that can be funneled down to where it matters to you. So, you know, yes, you will be able to look at that information according to the Leicester population or Leicestershire population or East Midlands. If you want to go, it depends on how big you want to actually look at that data, because data can be as big as you want it or as small as you want it. That's the key thing, that we as communities then need to analyze that data. And then, you know, you're lucky in Leicester. I live in Coventry and we don't have a single Gujarati, let alone a councillor, but we don't even have MPs who are Gujaratis. But you have Gujarati councillors there that you can then start to work with them and say, look, you know, we have this project. They will know, they can't decide to give you the money, but they can actually show you ways in being able to say, okay, the resources are here. We need to actually do it this way to try and make sure that you get a proportion of that funding. At the moment, nobody's done that in the UK. Hindu community is so, you know, fragmented. We're such a big community, but we are fragmented. And I've been saying that Amarukam will finish on Sunday. You know, we've been working on this for 6 months and we'll move on to a different role within government. But that doesn't mean that the Hindu community doesn't stick together. I think, you know, Piyush Bhai and Padmini Benka, you know, this census has somehow brought the entire Hindu community together. You know, I think we've reached about 1.5 million Hindus in the space of 2 months. I do not think there's ever been any kind of collaboration or integration in that way for the Hindu community. Then Piyush Bhai, my question would be back to you. How do we keep this going after census is finished? Because our work as communities will start after the census, not before the census. What are we going to do to keep this Sangatan and unity together, that we can all say, okay, now we are proud to be Hindus. We want to take an active part in politics. We want to take an active part in culture. We want to take an active part in social life. And then come together and strip
Mhm.
that information down. Call people like us. You know, I mean,
Yes.
our problem શું છે કે our community say કે ઓ પદ્મિની બેને કેમ અમે જઈને પૂછે, સંજય ભાઈને કેમ અમે જઈને પૂછે, અમે કરી શકે છે. You know, we have this mentality કે we are social workers. You know, we may be called different names of advisors and counselors, but at the end of the day, we are just the same as everybody else. But people in our community don't seem to want to, oh, Sanjay ભાઈને કહેશો કે ઈ કદાચ વધારે આગળ આવી જશે કે હું પાછળ રહી જઈશ કે something like that.
Indeed. Yes.
We've got to stop thinking that way and use the data.
Yes, absolutely. I'll just bring Padmini Ben again on response to that.
I had to come back again because I couldn't resist. જે હમણાં સંજયભાઈ વાત કરી કે in the end of the day અમને ખાલી ટાઇટલ મળેલું છે પણ કોના તરફથી મળેલું છે?
From the
આપણે
public.
પબ્લિક, બરાબર? તો એવી જ રીતે જેમ આપણે સંજયભાઈ કીધું કે એક વ્યક્તિ આગળ વધે છે તો એને સપોર્ટ કરો. ઓકે, જ્યારે એમ લાગે કે આ બરોબર વ્યક્તિ કામ નથી કરતા, then you decide. પણ એક વ્યક્તિ કામ કરતું હોય ને એને નોલેજ હોય તો આપણે એને આગળ લઈ જવાના, એની સાથે રહેવાનું. મેં પહેલા જ કીધું કે ટોપ પીપલ હોય એને હાથમાં રાખો તો તમારું કામ કયું નહીં થાય, બરોબર? એ બહુ જરૂરી છે. ને ટાઇટલ તો ખાલી નામ છે. હમણાં હું પહેલા મંદિરે આવતી હતી. હમણાં તો લોકડાઉન થયું એટલે બધું ચોલું છે. નકર જલારામની ખીચડી આપણે જે માજનમાં થાય છે 90% ટાઈમ્સ હું ને મારા મધર આવતા હોઈએ છે. ભજનમાં બેસીએ છીએ અમે ઘણીવાર. મેં પોતે કરાવી છે ખીચડી. એટલે મને એ અનુભવ છે. કહેવાનો મતલબ કે ત્યારે આપણે જાત ભાત કે કઈ નાત કે કઈ ઉંમર નથી જોતા. બરોબર ને? આપણે જો આપણે એવા પગલા ભરશું તો આપણું નેક્સ્ટ જનરેશન છે ને એ બી ભરશે. એક આપણે મિસાલ થઈ શકીએ છીએ કે નેક્સ્ટ જનરેશન વાળાને આપણે આમાં થોડા કેવી રીતે નાખવા. જેમ આપણે કહીએ કે આપણા હિન્દુમાં તમે જુઓ તો અત્યારના જે છોકરા છે નેક્સ્ટ જનરેશન એ આપણા ધર્મમાં નથી, આપણા ગુજરાતી એ બોલતા નથી, અમારી નજરે છે બધાય. પણ આપણે એ કેવી રીતે સુધાર? જો આપણે મુસલમાનનો દાખલો લઈએ તો મારી ઠોકીને મદ્રાસા મોકલાવશે, પણ આપણે નથી કરતા. પણ આપણે ચાલો એ જબરજસ્તી નથી કરતા, પણ થોડું ઘણું આપણે શીખવાડવું જોઈએ કે આપણે એ લોકોને આગળ જતા કોઈ એવો ટાઈમ આવે તો એ લોકોને આવડવું જોઈએ કે આપણે શું છે, આપણે હિન્દુ છે, આપણો ધર્મ આ છે. ભલે અહીંયા તમે બોર્ન થયા, તમે મોટા થયા, પણ ઘણા જે આફ્રિકાથી ને આવેલા છે તો એ બધા એના એન્સેસ્ટર બધા ઇન્ડિયન જ હતા ને, પણ ધર્મ સાચવી રાખ્યો, હિન્દુ સાચવી રાખ્યો. તો એ આપણે શીખવાડવાનું છે આગળ, ને આપણે આગળ વધવાનું છે. ને આઈ થિંક મારું તો એ કેવું છે કે જો આપણે બધા હિન્દુ ભાઈઓ હાથ પકડીને ચાલીએ ને તો આપણે બહુ બધું કરી શકીએ છીએ. તો આઈ હોપ આ મેસેજ બધાને જાય ને વિચાર કરે આ વિશે. Thank you.
We must stick together. I think Hindu community, આ બધું આપણે આજે project કર્યો છે, it has brought people together. And we must do something કે આના પછી બીજો પગલો શું છે આપણી પાસે?
We need to see. You're right. We need to see continuation. You're right.
મૂકી નહીં દેવાનું અડધેથી, continue રાખવાનું, continue.
True. Thank you. Right. So that's the end of the questions, Sanjay Bhai. So it really remains just for me to say thank you to both of you, Sanjay Bhai and Padmin Ben. Thank you for sparing your time. And Sanjay Bhai, you've done a marvelous effort, I must say.
તમે લોકોએ બધું આ ગોઠવ્યું, ખૂબ આભાર. I think જેમ ભાઈએ કીધું this બહુ ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ છે કરવું, ને આપણે ફ્યુચરમાં રાખવાનું, ને ડગલે પગલે એ લોકોને 2-3 વર્ષે યાદે કરાવવાનું કે આ ફ્યુચરમાં આવશે તો ચૂકવાનું નહીં.
I remember a saying, I can remember one saying that I learned when I was very young. Swami Vivekananda said, give me 100 people and I will change the world. 150 years ago, he said that. And all we need, UK ma, કે તમે એવા 30 હિન્દુ ગોતો કે આખા UK માં કે જે આપણું જે કામ જે સેન્સસ નું છે એ આગળ ચલાવી શકે. We will change the perception of where Hinduism is in the UK.
True.
We don't need 100 people, we need 30 people.
True.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, so let's put this plea out publicly. We're on an online platform. Yeah, we need 30 people, please. You know, that's the next step, isn't it?
Even if there was one person in all of the major towns and cities in the UK, 30, 40 of us, I tell you, you can influence, lobby,
Yes.
campaign. You can't do this on your own. And આપણે
Absolutely.
એકલા સમાજ પણ નથી કરી શકતા.
True.
Absolutely.
Very true. સાથ again
Absolutely.
એક જ વાત આવે કે સાથ હોય તો બધું થાય.
બધું થઈ જાય. Yes. And what a wonderful note to conclude on. So once again, thank you very much, both of you, Sanjay Bhai.
No problem.
Madhavi, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm now going to ask our margin treasurer, Lower Margin Treasurer Harish Bhai, to make some closing comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Harish Bhai, you'll need to unmute yourself.
થેન્ક યુ બધાને. જય સિયારામ, જય શ્રી કૃષ્ણ, જય જલારામ. સંજયભાઈ આજે એમનો બહુ કિંમતી સમય આપી શાંતિથી બધાને સમજાવ્યું વિગતવાર કે આપણે આ બધું જે કરવું જોઈએ અને આપણા બધા હિન્દુ વાસ્તે બહુ જ સારી વસ્તુ છે. આખા દેશમાં આપણને એક આપણું જરૂરિયાતનું જે છે એ લોકોને ખબર પડે કે આપણે અહીંયા છે. અને આપણા ગુજરાતીમાં મારા બા કહેતા કે જો મા પાસે માગીએ નહીં તો મા બી આપણને ના આપે. તો આ દેશને જો ખબર નહીં પડે કે આપણે આપણી સંસ્થા આટલી મોટી છે તો એ લોકો આપણા પાસે સગવડ કેવી રીતે કરી શકે. તો સંજયભાઈ, I would like to thank you very much for your time and information what you have given, so people can understand and try and put all this information into form so we can achieve some sort of success in what we are trying to achieve. And I would really appreciate your time and knowledge which you have given to everybody. અને પદ્મિનીબેન, તમે બી અવારનવાર અમને સાથ અને સહકાર આપો છો અને માર્ગદર્શન બી આપતા રહ્યો છો બધા કાઉન્સિલર સાથે. તો એમનો બી તમારો ઘણો ઘણો આભાર અમે મહાજન તરફથી તમારો માનીએ છીએ. અને આમાં ખાસ કરીને આપણા બધા જે પેટ્રોન્સ લોકો છે હર હંમેશ અમને સાથ આપે છે, આમાં જોઈન થાય છે અને એ લોકો ભાગ બી લે છે કે આમાં આપણે શું જ્ઞાન મળે કે આપણને શું ફાયદો થાય તેના વાસ્તે. તો તમારો બી ઘણો કિંમતી સમય આમાં તમે કાઢી અને બેસીને લીધું છે. તો આ જરૂર જે સંજયભાઈ આપને સૂચના આપી એ પ્રમાણે જ બધા ફોર્મ ભરી તાત્કાલિક અને વિગતવાર જે કહી એ પ્રમાણે ભરી અને ટાઈમસર એને ફિલ કરી આપશો. તો એનો ઘણો ઘણો આભાર તમારો અને આપણી સંસ્થાને બી ઘણી શક્તિ મળશે કે આપણે આગળમાં શું કરવું જોઈએ. એટલે તો તમારો બી ઘણો ઘણો આભાર. અને બીજું ખાસ કરીને અમારી IT ટીમ છે, પિયુષભાઈ છે, રાજુબેન છે, ભદ્રેશભાઈ, એ ન હોત તો આપણને બધાને ભેગા ના કરી શકત. તો એમનો બી હું ઘણો ઘણો આભાર માનું છું કે આ ટેકનોલોજી અમારા જેવા બુઢાને તો નથી કરી શકતા, પણ તમે છે નોલેજ તો તમે વાપરીને અમને બધાને ભેગા કરો છો. ભલે આ લોકડાઉન છે, આમ તો દૂર છે, પણ આપણને એમ લાગે છે આપણે બધા સૌની નજીક છે, બધાના હૃદયમાં બેઠા છીએ. તો તેમનો બી હું ઘણો ઘણો આભાર માનું છું કે આટલી બધી રાત દિવસ મહેનત કરી અને આ બધી અમને સેવા આપો છો અને સપોર્ટ આપો છો. તો મહાજન તરફથી અને બધા તરફથી તમારો ઘણો ઘણો આભાર માનું છું. અને ખાસ કરીને અત્યારના આપણા એક્ટિંગ પ્રેસિડેન્ટ ચેતનભાઈ અમલાણી બી બહુ જ મહેનત કરી રહ્યા છે. અંડર હિઝ ગાઈડન્સ એન્ડ સુપરવિઝન આપણે બધા જે કામ કરીએ છીએ તો એ બી આપણને બહુ જ ઉત્સાહ આપે છે. તો હું એનો બી ઘણો ઘણો આભાર માનું છું કે આમાં એમનો ઘણો હાથ છે કે તન મન ધનથી જે સેવા આપે છે. તો એમનો બી હું ઘણો ઘણો આભાર માનું છું. અને ખાસ કરીને બીજો બે આપણા ટ્રસ્ટી છે, કમિટી મેમ્બર્સ છે અને બધી આપણે મંદિરની કમિટી છે, તો તેમનો બી કે આમાં બધા એ લોકો બી સાથ આપતા રહે છે. તો એમનો બી ઘણો ઘણો આભાર. તો સૌને જય સિયારામ, જય શ્રી કૃષ્ણ અને જય જલારામ અને થેન્ક યુ વેરી મચ. જય સિયારામ.
Thank you very much, Harish Bhai. Thank you. Thank you. The IT team is only able to do all this work with the guidance and support of all of the Majan, and mainly because of all the wonderful followers that we have online. For last year, even though we have been on lockdown, we haven't missed a single occasion to celebrate online. Every we have celebrated them all online, and until the Monday is open, we will continue to do so. Thank you very much for your words of support. However, we will end with a musical video, again emphasizing the census. So I'll just play that now.
એક જ સવાલ, કેટલા followers હતા આજે Facebook ઉપર આપણે આ sessionમાં?
I will find out. I'm not on Facebook. Zoom ઉપર ચલાવું છું.
Okay.
I will find
Alright,
out
okay.
and let you know. Sure.
Alright, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. Hi. Huh? No volume. Oh, okay. I don't know what's happened then. Anyway, it's ending now.